queuing up to come in here to come in.
Okay, it is set
Okay.
now broadcasting.
Okay, so I think people who choose to join us will join us, and we are live on Facebook too. So Whitney, this is your gig.
You just sit back and relax, Ronan, because
That's what I'm going to do. Well,
how does that feel?
I'm curious as to, so your major is in psychology, right?
Yes, my degrees are in psychology.
Your degree in psychology.
Before I was a photographer, I was a professional counselor.
Okay. So see the way I've just turned the interview that I'm doing the interview?
I know. I'm gonna turn it back on you.
Yeah, but before we do that though, what do you get when you get somebody with a degree in psychology and an Irish man in an Irish pub in a snug? What do you think?
I don't know, but I think we're getting ready to find out.
Very good. I'm sorry it's not Guinness, but you know, sláinte.
No, sláinte. Here we go. Mine is colored water.
Very
I gotta
good.
keep my head on straight.
Very good.
I will say before we start though, being a former counselor, I tend to naturally ask people inappropriate questions. So if at any time I ask you something that you don't want to answer, you can say, no way.
Okay, no problem. I'll say ligta ski, which means no, it means it sounds really worse than English. In Irish it's not as bad, but ligta ski, our teachers used to tell us that, which was if you were talking and you shouldn't be. It's shut your mouth is the direct translation, but it's not really meant the way it sounds in English. Yeah, it was much more nicer in the way it was done in Irish. Ligta ski. So if you hear that, you know, I'm asking you not to ask me that, please.
That sounds good. I've learned several choice Irish phrases from you, and the one I've tried to get you to say is my Southern phrase, which is "bless your heart."
Bless your heart.
Bless your heart, and that just kind of means, oh, honey. You can say anything negative about somebody if you follow it with "bless their heart."
Okay. Very good.
Well, let's get down to business. I did have to twist your arm a little bit to get you to come on here, but you have been this force behind the scenes. I've watched over and over again. You create these amazing things for our industry, and then you step back and you kind of hide and don't take any credit and you let them happen. So I think it's time for people to get to know you, and not just some of your story, but there's some powerful lessons in your story that I think we as photographers and business owners can learn from, because you have run businesses, owned businesses, been the CEO for a long time. You have so much education, a lot of it self-taught, and you share that in different arenas, but you haven't been sharing that with us in the Think Tank group. So I want to pull a little bit of that out if you're up for it.
Sure. I'll try my best. You would be mad to take my word for anything anyway. You know, I'm an Irishman drinking wine like in a snug. You know, good luck.
I've said from the first time I met you, like, man, I wonder how much of his success is just having that great accent, because I think if I had an Irish accent, my sales would go up like 50%. Right.
Okay. It doesn't, for some reason, like when I'm in Ireland, it doesn't seem to make any difference at all. I wonder why.
Hey, in America, it's pretty sweet. Okay. I want to just get into kind of who you are professionally first. You are the founder and CEO of Infinity Group is what it's called, right?
Yes.
Which includes Photo Value, 3XM, which is what most of us know you for, but then also the Business Success Academy.
That's right.
You've got a lot of things going on. But you started long before these businesses.
Started in life. Yeah. So
in business. I mean,
yeah. Well, 21st of March, 1969, I was born. And I was born into a family business. So my father had started his first business in 1966. He married my mother in 1967, and I came along a couple of years later as the first of four. And I suppose growing up, we lived in that environment of family business. So I was probably the one in the family that always wanted to be in business. I don't know. I don't know whether it was in my blood, I was born with it or whatever, but it always fascinated me. So I spent my summers in the family business. And my mother kept saying, no, 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 go get a proper job, join the civil service, work for the government, because I know, like I see in America that often that government shuts down and people don't get paid. That doesn't happen in Europe. If you work for the government, you're the last one not to get paid. You always get paid. You're guaranteed to get paid, and you're guaranteed a pension, and you're guaranteed your increments. So she used to always say, Ronan, go and do that. And we used to talk then, and I always had a sort of commercial piece to me, but I was also a little bit creative, but not creative as in painting or visualization, but more ideas of creative, joining. I used to be able to join dots on things. And my mother said, you should be an accountant, because she ran our account side of our business, but she wasn't a qualified accountant. And I think she always wanted somebody in the family to be a qualified accountant, even though she'd outrun most accountants. So I decided when I left school that I was going to become an accountant. So I started studying accountancy, and I did my level 1 ACAs, and I said, this is not for me. I just don't like this. I hate it. I'd fallen in love with Susan, who's still my wife, because we met in high school at 17. And she was, after finishing, she studied secretarial stuff, and she's getting a job. And I sort of weighed everything up and says, I don't like studying accountancy. I want to be in the family business. And I don't want to risk losing Susan either, because she was going to start working and might motor on if I spent another 4 years in college or 3 years becoming an accountant. So I went, okay, I have to go to my parents and say, this is not for me. I'm sorry, but can I have a job in the family business? So they said, yeah, come on in. But just one thing, couple of things clear. One is the business isn't big enough to pay you and your dad, a similar wage in time. And two, you're going to start sweeping the floor first. I went, okay. So I went in and I started sweeping the floor and whatever. And I was there 3 months, and I saw a whole lot of stuff wrong operationally, that system's wrong. And I used to go and say, we need to do this, we need to do that. And we did that. And then the sales guy, we had a lithographic print business at that time. So printing brochures and leaflets and stuff like that. But it was quite a small business. And then we had Photo Value as well, which was the mount business. And I said to, we were there 3 months sweeping the floor, and we'd one salesperson in the print business, and Dad said, he called me up to the office one day, and he says, Joe, who's been here for 20 years, is leaving. He's joining one of our competitors. I went, okay. And he says, you're replacing him. And I went, what? He says, no, you're replacing him. I booked you next week on a 2-day sales course, and I bought you a Nissan Micra van. I don't know if you have those in America, but they're a small van. So a car without windows, if I describe it, back windows, yeah, with no back seats in it. And he said, I'm buying you that. I've put Ryle printers on the side windows of the back of the van, and you're going to sell for the print business. So that was the start.
Sales.
Yes. So that was interesting. I'm an introvert. I'm not a salesperson at all. So I found it really, really difficult. Because in those days, we didn't have social media and all that. So the sales process was, you went out, you knocked on the door and said, can I show you what we do? And you have a need for what we do. Can we talk about that and try and sell print? So to cut a long story short, I was selling for about 2 months, and then I said, I know why Joe left. Because we used to do the printing at this time, which was thermography. It was raised printing. You might remember it, where the lettering, when you printed on a letterhead, that the lettering used to be raised up and glossy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we were the only ones in Ireland doing that. That's what Dad started the business doing first. But the laser printer had been invented. So when the laser printer was invented, that paper would not go with the thermography, would not go through a laser printer. And if it did, it used to melt and break the printer. So and our equipment was not built to be economically be able to produce print that wasn't thermography. So I said, that's why Joe left after 20 years. So I came back to base and said, I've bad news, Mom and Dad. This business is going nowhere. We've got to reinvent this, because the laser printer's here now, and the clients are saying that their printers are getting jammed. And we're going to have no business unless we pivot and pivot fast. And we did. I persuaded them to, I said, look, color print was only coming out then. It's crazy, like color print for brochures and stuff. I said, that's where I think we should go. And I said, the channel to market, I think, is to offer a service to graphic designers and ad agencies that we do this marketing print. And we did that, and we built the business up over 10 years. And you know, we sort of went from X turnover to 10X turnover in that time. And that brings me up to 2000, the year 2000. So in 1996 then, if I go back 4 years, we had the Photo Valley business, and I wasn't involved in that at all. And then I got involved in it to a degree. And then Dad decided to semi-retire, and he made me the boss of both businesses, both the print business and the Photo Valley business. Both small businesses at the time. We had about, I don't know, 16 people in them or thereabouts. So what happened in the print business then was, like, at that stage we had presses, 40-inch presses, you know, printing 10,000 sheets an hour in color. We had 28-inch presses printing the same. We had full binderies. We had color separations. We had pre-press. We had all that equipment running 2 shifts a day. And what happened then was, 2 things happened. One is the internet came about and started to compete for clients' marketing budget. So do we print that brochure now, or do we do something? Do we build a website? And the second thing that happened was, Ireland at that time was the center for software. So Microsoft were here, Apple were here, Symantec were here. They all had their European headquarters in Ireland. And around that had built a whole big printing business, massive printing business that we weren't in, producing computer manuals. Because then when you used to buy software, do you remember, you used to get a manual that thick?
Oh yeah.
So that was massive business for the printing industry in Ireland, but that went to DVD, or not DVD, CD. DVD wasn't around then, to CD. So all those printers started to lose out. So they decided, where do we go? And you say, oh, we'll go into that marketing print area. And they'd made a lot of money, so they were able to go into that. So we had demand going this way because of marketing budgets being pitched for and people spending their marketing budget on websites and stuff. And then we had supply going that way with all the computer manual guys coming in. So the price, what happens then?
Wow.
So what happened then was, we were in a place, so we had about, in the print business at that time, we had about 25, 26 people, I think it was. And I sat down and I had a look at it and I said, okay, so what do we do now? I said, the smaller printer was giving a much better service, a one-on-one service, like a lot of photographers would do, yeah, as a smaller business. And then the big guys were eating us alive on economy of scale and price. And we were sort of the ham and the sandwich in the middle. So I said, what do we do? And I said, do you know what? I think the only thing we can do is merge with another business, you know, try and see. So I reached out, and I knew there was other businesses of similar size who were struggling. And eventually I found who I thought was the ideal partner. And we put the financials together. We didn't share one customer. They were in a different market segment than we were, slightly different market segment. We were much stronger in the pre-press digital print area. So we had HP Indigo presses as well as the medium format presses. And they had a much better bindery and were much better at the bigger sheet size. So this is a marriage made in heaven. We put this together. We don't share any customers. We can cross-sell to each customer base. And this would be absolutely magic. And it was the biggest disaster I ever made, probably, in business. Because what happened was, yes, it was very logical, but I wish there was a book, Jack Welch has it in his book, that I read a year or two after we did the merger. And he was talking about the mistakes he'd made in merging businesses. And he said the biggest lesson he learned in the first 1 or 2 mergers that failed was culture fit. And that was the mistake here. So they were used to, they did a lot of government work. So they were used to, they get a job today, deliver it in 2 weeks. Sure, if it's 3 weeks, it doesn't matter that much. And we get a file today, we need it for the client tomorrow. This is marketing print, you know, it's going in an envelope run or a direct mail run or whatever. And we had decided when we did it, the plan was that I would spend 2 days a week in the merge business. So their management team were pretty much running it, even though we were 50-50 shareholders and I was a director. and that I would spend 3 days a week in photo value. And within 3 months, I realized the mess I'd made. I said, okay, I'm not leaving this mess behind. I'm going to sort it out. So we set about sorting it out, and we started to someone invent some new things. And eventually the board, the people we merged with, there was just an absolute parting of the ways. I bought them out in 2006 because I saw a future in the business. Even though we weren't making any money, we were breaking even. But we had developed out what we call cross-platform marketing. So we saw an opportunity to take a company's database, send them a direct mail piece to their clients that was personalized to that client with a link to a website that when the person visited that URL with their name on it, it talked to them on an individual basis.
Wow.
So it allowed to use direct mail, personalized direct mail to direct somebody. So we done a lot of tests, and we were well down the road with one of the largest banks in Ireland and one of the largest insurance companies. And we were about to do a deal. So I said, you know what? I think there's something in this. And when I say about to do a deal, within the next year or two, you know, we had to do tests and go through processes like those two companies did. But anyway, we were falling out at board level, and we saw this opportunity and said, there's probably no future as a print business on its own, there's a future in this. So so I bought out our partners in 2006. We started doing tests. It started to work. The signals were very good. And then Lehman's went bust. And what happened was our government print just stopped spending. They just stopped overnight. They said, no, we're not printing annual reports anymore for each government department. They're all going online as a PDF. And then we had the bank saying, we've no money left. We don't want to give out any more money because there's a credit squeeze. So we don't need your solution anymore. And we hadn't at that stage had a cash reserve. And so when the hit happened, we went from breaking even to losing about $60,000 a month.
Wow.
And within 4 months, I said, this is over. There's no saving of this. We got to put it into liquidation, and the business went bust.
And you know, this is a theme for all of the truly successful businesses that I've listened to podcasts about how they got started and everything. This is a theme over and over we hear, is that there was an early on failure, and they learned from that and went on to have their greatest success. So what would you say you really learned from this that you were able then to apply now that's made your business even better?
Well, there was two things. So the first thing is, I think I said to you, I'm good at joining dots. So even in hindsight, I joined dots to go backwards and say, when did the rot actually start? And the rot actually started back in the business pre-merger, when we were one of the first companies in Ireland to buy a HP digital press, which was able to take a database and to produce print that was customized, each sheet being different. Yeah. And I went to a trade show in Germany, and I went, this is ingenious. I said, I can sell this. But you know what I didn't do, even though I'm a marketeer? I didn't do my market research. Mm-hmm. So we spent the equivalent of $700,000 on this machine. We put it in, and then I went to market, and I realized, you know what? None of the customers have a database to actually drive the individual print and color to the potential client. So that was lesson number one. So that was the root cause that actually caused us that when we had those challenges a number of years later, we had no choice but to consider doing a merger. Yeah, because we didn't have the money to pivot on our own. And the second thing was, when the tide went out in 2008 or in 2009 in the merge business, and we were found with our trousers down, with no cash reserves, I said, that is never happening me again. So when this one hit, luckily our business Infinity Group, that includes all those businesses, we can pretty much survive for a year with no sales because of the cash reserves we built.
And that's a lesson that, a lot of photographers are learning right now, that, with the quarantine and with not being able to work for 6-8 weeks, is if they didn't have those cash reserves on hand, then they're really hurting right now. Yes. And so, we're hopeful that most of those businesses can make it through and then make changes going forward, so that if this ever happens again, they're in a better place. And I know you have some advice for that we'll get to later.
Okay.
But this reminds me, so I know you have kind of a quote that you live by, and I'm going to read it. It's by Winston Churchill.
Yes.
Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts.
So that breaks into 3 pieces for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if we take the first bit, that success is not final. Sometimes we say, if I get to that level with my business or whatever goal it is, it might be a business goal, it might be something else. When you get there, as humans, you tend to say, okay, I'm there now. That's great, but what's next?
Mm-hmm.
So success moves all the time, or your definition of success of what that might be. Failure is not fatal is just, you touched on it, like VC firms now, they won't back a management team unless someone in that management team has failed in business, because of the lessons you learn from that.
Yeah.
So don't regard it as fatal. It's tough. I went into don't get me wrong, when New Oceans at the time, which is the print business, went bust, I was in depression for 2 years. I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. How Susan put up with me is beyond me, but she did. But I was an absolute mess. Like, I was just crazy. Not a mess in a really bad way, but I just wasn't a proper human being. I'm an introvert, so I totally went into myself. I didn't really want to mix with people. My self-confidence was in the gutter. It was really, really difficult. But then the third part of that that quote is, you've got to have the courage to continue. And someday you go, I'm going to continue. And I think the thing that helped me a lot come through it was I had started doing a master's in international sales. And when the company went bust, I put it on hold for a little bit because I just couldn't deal with it. And then I went, you know what, I'm going to finish that. I'm going to go back and do it. And I took about a year out. I went back and I finished it. And that sort of gave me confidence in myself that I'm not useless, that I can go on and learn something new and get a new qualification. And, so I was so happy with that. And that gave me the confidence then to build again and get up. But it isn't easy, but you learn a hell of a lot from it. And if nothing else, you promise yourself, you know what, no matter what happens, I'm not going back there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going back there.
That's amazing. I know there are a lot of people out there right now who are just nodding their heads and a lot of people, I've heard whispers of, failure, depression, anxiety, all these things. And people are just not starting to talk about that. And I think that is so healthy, because if someone like you talks about it, or someone like me, I've struggled with depression at times. It makes it okay for other people to talk about it too. And having an episode of depression, here I'm speaking counselor here for just a minute. It doesn't mean that something's wrong in your head. Depression can be brought on by a situation, and that's totally normal. And you don't necessarily need medication for it. You might for a time, but you're adjusting to a new situation. You're trying to figure out a new way, and it's the healthy part of being alive. And so I think people take that to heart too much, when really I bet 90% of the people have struggled with it at one time or another. Yes,
it is. And talking to people can help a lot. Like me being an introvert, I don't naturally talk to one of my children. Well, 2 of them. One of them she comes up as an introvert, but she's an extrovert, and she's an extroverted introvert, if that makes sense. I can't remember her Myers-Briggs designation, but it's actually the description of it. So she never shuts up, but she's an introvert. And then we've another daughter who's an absolute extrovert, so when anything happens with her, like, she's talking about it, she's, and I think that helps her deal a bit. But as an introvert, I think we tend to lock it up in here, and I'd encourage you, no matter what it is, talk to somebody, reach out to somebody. I try to, every couple of days, even just somebody, I said, I haven't seen them on Facebook for a while. Let's just send them a message and see, are they okay, And I've had people do that to me as well, even though I seem to be all over the place at the moment with the think tank and stuff. But they're still sending a message saying, are you okay? You looked a bit tired tonight. Are you okay? So yeah, I'm fine. I'm working on stuff, and I'm working 12 to 14 hour days. We've some new projects that I can't talk about tonight that we're working on, but it's they'll be, we've been working hard in trying to find new businesses and new ways. So let me give you an example. So I sat down with our management team, because our photo value, our product business went from here to zero overnight, like most photographers. So I sat down and I said, right, that's currently 75% of our sales, because we have the packaging side of the business. So I gave my team a challenge. I said, I want us to collectively pivot our business that in 3 months' time, we've replaced our real revenue or added value margin if the product business never comes back. So
Wow.
they've been working round the clock, not round the clock, but long hours in trying to do that in various different ways. And we're testing and trialing things and stuff like that. And some of the things we're trialing will work and some won't, but hopefully there's something in there that will and help us. But at least we have a focus and a vision and we've a goal to try and make by the end of September. Yeah.
And can I say, okay, this is just what I love about you, is that, take for example, this quarantine. You could have done what a lot of us have done. I mean, you didn't have business. You could have put in a garden. You could have binge watched Netflix. But instead, you chose to gather your team together and think about new things that you could do, new ways you could be successful. You started this think tank group to support photographers who are going through this. And that is just so who you are as an entrepreneur, but also as a person, because you do things that are very smart. But I think you also do things that are just very much caring about our industry. And I think that's why photographers have enjoyed getting to know you so much and just want to be a part of what you are doing, because that is very genuine. I mean, David and I, we know you, we know we've had many discussions about this, is completely genuine. And I think that's part of why you are so successful. You can agree.
I can,
and
but
you're
you see,
so humble.
No, I'm not. I wouldn't call it humble. There's I know you're going to ask me something about books, so I'm going to bring one up at this stage, if that's okay. So, I have never been an avid reader. I find it hard to finish a book.
That's surprising.
But, yeah, there you go. So, I tend to find it hard to concentrate on a book. So before I get into what I do for anyone else who's like that might help you, it's more expensive to do it this way, but it has helped me. But going back, one of the first books I actually completed was by a guy called Ricardo Semler. And Ricardo ran a family business in Brazil. And one of the things is that he was working crazy hours. And one of the things his dad did to him one day is he brought him into their boardroom, and it was a good sized business. And they looked out and there was a graveyard near them. And he said, "Look, Ricardo, it's like this. Do you see that grave down there? That's Mary's grave. That's her business over there. She's dead 10 years. She thought her business couldn't do without her. It's still there." So, you've got to make sure that it's not just about business. And that sounds funny coming from me, because I do work long hours, but I don't regard my business as work. I actually enjoy it. But he had a saying in that, and it was, success equals IQ minus ego. So when I don't react maybe to when somebody gives me a compliment, it's that I'm conscious, everything I try and do, I try and live by that, that we all have an ego, and no matter what we do, it's hard to control it sometimes, but I try and do my best to control it. So don't let my ego override my IQ or what I think is the right thing to do. And then the third part of that, I added to that to say, I disagree with your hard work thing, because some people do get lucky and you can get there. And, he wrote a book called The 7-Day Weekend, which was his second book, which was about, how to systemize your business and stuff like that. So you can only work 3 days a week if you want. And I know you and David have done a lot of that. Yeah. But that's not me. I because I don't regard our work, I like to be busy all the time and doing stuff in a different way. It's just a different drive. Everyone's different, right? We're all made differently. So I added to that, success equals, in brackets, IQ minus ego, and then put hard work in the end of it. So that's what I live my life by. I try and say, right, Ronan, that's your ego taking over there, the fact you want to do that. What does your IQ tell you? Don't do it, you know? So it's just easy for me to remember, and it's just in my subconscious that I check against, you know, when something's going to happen.
Well, that's funny, because one of my favorite questions that I was going to ask you is, what is your definition of success?
Okay.
And that's it in a nutshell. I mean, you have a specific formula for it, but I guess to flesh that out a little bit, I would expand upon that and ask, okay, so for you, what does the perfect successful day look like, or week? What are you doing over the course of a day or a week that you can look at and go, that's a successful life? I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this ahead of time. So
no, it was not. You didn't. You told me about the book. That was I think the only you hinted me in. That's a really good question. So, okay, so I drive people crazy, and why I drive people that work with me, because I'm the most unorganized person in the world. So, and what I mean by that is that I enjoy being spontaneous and solving problems on the spot. And I get a kick out of doing things like that. And therefore, before, like when I was much younger, I used to think that that was better to be that way than be organized. So I've had to be really careful or put around me a team who make up for all my deficiencies in those areas. But as a result of that, I drive them mad with my, you know, they say, oh, here's another mad idea from this lunatic, and we haven't even half finished the last thing he came up with, you know. So a successful week for me is, if I bring it to a day, every day I try and learn something new. So a successful day is if I've learned something new that day. So I review that every night pretty much as to did I learn something new today. A successful week, I think, is that Susan, my wonderful wife of all these years, and we have 4 children. They're still all living at home, even though Jonathan's 28 this year, and Myrna is 17, our baby. Yeah, it's a different culture in Ireland than it is in the US, in that when they leave high school and they go to university or college or whatever you guys call it, that tends to be, you know, they fly the nest at that stage a lot in the US, right? In Ireland, it's a little bit different. They tend to stay living at home until they're in a relationship where they move out to move into another home. So there's a slight difference there. So that's why we still have our crew. Mind you, the 2 girls are dying to get out. They're just waiting for the 2 lads. Lads, if you are watching, they're waiting for the... And don't forget, you have to do the interview with me first. So I don't know whether I answered your question there or not, but it's a successful week, I think it is. I don't spend a lot of time looking back. I spend most of my time looking forward, and sometimes to my detriment in that I don't live in the present enough sometimes. But when I look back, I'm looking back to say, I have this problem. Did it happen before, even though it's slightly different, but the reason why it was caused is similar. So can I learn something from that to fix the problem here? I don't know if that makes sense or not. So successful week is being alive, number 1. 2, my wife still loving me as she does. Why, I don't know, but she does. My 4 kids being healthy and being here, and being able to put food on the table, having making sure that the people that work with us in our businesses are safe and healthy and well as well. And a lot of what we do is built into that. Like, so we have in our business, we run a profit sharing scheme that if we have a good year, everyone in the business benefits, including
I love that.
people. And then the other side of that then is, you know, our clients then is the next, what's that word? Part of the stool, the 3 legs, the 3rd leg, you know, are they okay? And what's happening in their world? And what can we do to help them? And what can we do to help not just them, but their clients? And so, like, a lot of people ask me, Whitney, you know, in other industries, you know, Ronan, you know what, if you were a banker, you'd make a fortune, or if you were in tech, you'd make a fortune. And that's not really my driver. It's not about money for me. It's about purpose, and it's about, and I know the difference photography makes. I can't even take a selfie, but what I do know is that the better photographers are at in business, the more photographs will be enjoyed by society. And as a result, that society will be healthier in mind, body, and spirit. So I know if I can help photographers be better in business and they survive longer, they'll take more photos, there'll be more wall art, there'll be more images on folio boxes, there'll be more images on albums, they'll be enjoyed by people. And that in itself will create a healthier society. So that's why I love this industry, is the difference. And then people say, yeah, but if you work for Facebook, they do the same. They've connected people through these things. But there's a negative side to Facebook too, right? Like there's all the politics that goes on. You know, one of our own daughters felt bullied from social media when she was 16 or 17 at a really tough time. But that doesn't happen in photography. Mm-hmm. And I think what, you know, our health services and our frontline workers, you know, they've put their lives on the line for this. But I think our job as an industry coming out of this is people are coming closer together, and it's our job now to capture those moments, to make people feel good about themselves again, and, you know, to capture history, their family history, their relationships that they can enjoy forever. So I think we have a very important job as an industry coming out of where we're coming from. You know, when we've defeated this third world war against an invisible enemy, that, you know, there's going to be a lot of need to make sure that communities are healthy in mind, body, and spirit. There's going to be people depressed. There's going to be, unfortunately, suicide rates are going to go up. You know, all those negative things are going to happen, but we can actually, as an industry, help, I think, reduce that. That's my view. And that's why I love this industry.
Well, and I think, so all of these things you're talking about, for me, kind of equal one word, and that is purpose.
Yes.
Anybody, to be truly successful, you have to be working with purpose. You have to believe in what you're doing so much that you're willing to put the energy and effort behind it. And that is what you are so honed in on, is just how meaningful this industry can be. And I really appreciate that. And I think that's why you are so driven to work for your business, to work on the behalf of photographers, to help them get better as well.
Yeah, and it becomes, Whitney, not about work at that stage. You know, it's not work. That's why I do the hours I do, because if it was work, I'd be going, oh, I'm fed up, you know, good luck.
Yeah.
You know, I've done my 8 hours. Let's move on.
That's why your definition of success is so important. Because you were just talking about, if I was in another industry, I could make a lot more money. But money is not what you're equating with success. It's your purpose. It's the people that you work for. It's the people that work with you in your company, and the people that you are training, you know, the photographers who are, you know, getting product from you, but are also learning from you. Now, I want to get back to that, but I also want to backtrack just a little bit, because you were talking about how much, what a challenge you are for your team sometimes.
Yes.
Because of big ideas. And I do think every company needs a big idea person, but boy, they need a lot of people under them to keep them organized and to keep their ideas going. But what you didn't say is that you have family and then you have your team at work, but there's actually quite a lot of overlap there. A lot of your family works with you. You all work in the same company. How many of your family members work in your various companies?
Well, we've 30 people in our business, and this might sound terrible. They're all family, but there's 7 of them that share the same bloodline as myself or my wife. Mm-hmm. So if we take the blood family piece as apart from the total family, there's 7, I think. So there's my son is in the business. Susan, my wife, is our chief financial person. Keith, my brother, who owns half the business with me, he's our operations director. Zena, my sister, is our marketing manager. Her husband, Alan, is our chief software developer. Susan's and my brother-in-law, he's married to Susan's sister, he's been with us 25 years, I think, or 30 years. He's in our production, one of our production departments. How many is that? Have I missed anybody? Our daughter worked in the business for a little while, but that was always meant to be temporary, Freya. And she was with us for 3 years, and she's since followed her grandmother, my mother's advice that was given to me, and she's got a job with the civil service.
Good for her. Stability, right?
Yes, yes.
So, how's that working for you, Ronan?
Family.
All this family. I mean, I know there are, obviously I work full time with my husband as well. So I know there are a lot of blessings in that. There are a lot of challenges in that. And there are ways that you can kind of deal with it. So how have you found that to be challenging, and what have you found that works?
It can be challenging in that, I suppose, when there's disagreement on things, or there's a different view as to how things happen. So I suppose Keith and I bought the business from our parents when they retired in 2011. So we're the shareholding directors. So that's the top line of our business if we take it, the two of us. And we're quite different. So I'm more, I don't know if anyone has read the book Traction, but it's a great book if you have even if you work with your partner, you can bring a lot of that down to even a two-person business, yeah. But it works on the principle that in most successful businesses, there's two main jobs at the top. One is the visionary and one is the integrator. So the integrator is the person who runs the business, who's organized, who's systematic, who does all that side. And the visionary is responsible for a number of things as to where you're going to bring your business, where can it go, what are the threats, what are the opportunities, what's the culture of the business. So they tend to be responsible for the culture in the business as well, you know, and determining what the core values are and all that softer side of the business. So and it's a really good system, and they have their wheel of various different things. So we pretty much try and build our business around that. And then everyone else in the business, you know, we try, and we have a lot of heated debate, but that only brings out the best idea. You know, and I find that challenging because I'm an INTP personality type, which means that if I come up with an idea, I've analyzed it to death in my head. And therefore, when I present it, I'm presenting it on the basis that there's no other, that I've absolutely got this right. So that when someone challenges that thought process, my natural reaction of my personality type is to argue back. Yeah. So I suppose on that sort of stuff, it's me that's the biggest problem quite often. So if there's going to be an argument, I've probably caused it by saying, look, I'm fed up with you lot. You're wrong. I'm right. You know, and everyone gets upset with me, and you know, we leave the meeting. Or we even had one 2 weeks ago, I think, where we have a virtual stand-up every single day. When we were in our offices, we have a daily stand-up. So the first 5 minutes every day, we all stand up together. We say what our goal was for yesterday, and did we achieve it? What's our goal for today? Have they a shout out for anyone else in the business who helped them and went beyond the norm? What's the other things we do? What's cool going on in their life, if anything? And I think they're the four things we discuss. And it's just a check-in, you know, to see. But from a management point of view, it's a great way just to see. It allows you evaluate very quickly in a couple of seconds whether people are achieving the goals that they said they were going to set out on a daily basis. And then if you do that every 7 days, then at the end, or every 5 days, 7 days for me, 5 days for everyone else, on the Friday, then you know whether what you hoped would get achieved in that week is achieved or not. But you know where you are every single morning as to where you are with that. But you have a bit of fun and a bit of crack with it as well. We're not drug addicts. Crack in Ireland means fun and banter.
Right.
Just so everyone knows, we're not there with our crack. Yes, so that's pretty much it. I don't know if I've answered the question. I keep talking. I feel I'm talking too much.
I mean, the goal of an interview is for you to talk. So you're doing great.
Okay.
So you're saying having clearly defined roles in the business is very important.
Yes.
For everybody's sanity.
Yes.
And then one thing I know just working with my spouse that I found really challenging is just when to turn it off. You know, because when you're working in the business and then you're going home and you're still talking about business, it's hard to know, especially when it's something that you love and you enjoy talking about, it's hard to know where those boundaries are.
And that's a challenge definitely in our family, because I don't turn off. Like our kids would say on occasion, "Dad, it's 9 o'clock. Seriously." And I'm going, what's wrong? You're talking business again. I'm going, oh yeah, okay, sorry. But for me, it's just, it gets back to that purpose thing. Yeah. When it's your purpose and your passion, it's not work. So let's just talk about it. We're not talking about work. We're talking about something much bigger than work,
Right.
But if they don't share the same passion and the same purpose, because their lives are different, well, then it's hard. It's really hard for them, isn't it? So that's the balance. And how do you that balance? And if you got all my kids in here now, and Susan, my wife, came in, and you asked them, does Dad go on too much about work, and does he switch off, and does he give us enough attention because he seems to be focused on work so much? They'd probably all say, no, he doesn't. That I'm not that I do work too hard, and that I don't give them enough attention at times. But they do know that I love them, and I'll do anything for them, and I always will. So I think they sort of reluctantly accept it at this stage, because they know that they can't change me. But they always know that I'm always there for them anytime they're needed, and if they want to have a chat, we'll have a chat. But yeah, they'll probably say, yeah, but you always find a way to turn it back to work somehow. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I'm not a good role model from that point of view, I have to say.
Well, and but there's something to be said for recognizing your own weaknesses.
Yes.
And for that to be something that you're working on, to know, yes, okay, maybe I do need to turn it off a little bit earlier. Maybe I do need to make some intentional time with my kids. And it sounds like you just need to put that on your goal list.
Yeah. See this? There's all my weaknesses.
What's that?
It's full of weaknesses, all those pages.
Well, I'm going to focus on another one of your strengths, because we talked a little bit about just your love of learning, and you're just a sponge. I mean, every time I see you, you're on kind of a different kick. There's some new thing that you're learning about, that you're excited about. And the thing that I think is different about you, a lot of people enjoy learning for learning's sake. But when you learn something, you go all the way with it. You don't just learn it for yourself. You take it to the next level, and you learn it to the point where if you love it, you want to be able to share it with other people. And I'm talking about things like, you got into StoryBrand, and you went through and you became a StoryBrand guide so that you can now teach that to other people. Profit First, you became a Profit First professional coach, so you could teach that to people. And that's just what I keep seeing you doing. And is that the reason that you kind of developed the Business Success Academy and the Ways to Go program? Is that where that came from?
It didn't come directly from that. It came from the purpose of recognizing that a lot of photographers struggle with the business aspect of photography, and that's where most help was needed. So in fairness to, I'm going to mention somebody here, because so Ryle, who's the chairman of the MPA in England, Ray and I would share some similar things on the business side. So Ray is all about, photographers, you have to get qualified, you have to qualify, you have to absolutely master your art, and and the business side. And a couple of years ago, we were at the MPA National Awards for Photography, and they're like the Oscars, yeah, and very well run. And there was a whole lot of photographers going on stage and accepting their awards and all that. And I know a lot of them, and I know that a lot of them, this is not meant in any bad way, but I know that they struggle with the business of photography. They are wonderful artists and wonderful photographers, but they struggle with the business side and the consequences of that. And I said to Ray, can we have a chat? And we agreed that we would have a meeting over the next couple of days. So he put together a team. We went in. I said, look, we agreed that there was 3 legs to the stool. Yeah, if we start at the very top, there's recognition. So all those photographers going up on stage and getting their awards for being the best photographers in the UK and some in the world for what they do, that was their driver. Yeah. So the natural output of that is, if I want to get on that stage, I've got to spend loads and loads of time getting better and better and better as a photographer. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to actually make decent money from it. So we agree that, so that's one stage. So we have to put recognition for the business of photography in place. And then the other leg then is mentorship, and then the other is qualifications. Yeah. So we sat down anyway, and we agreed that we were going to take ways to go that we had developed and introduce that as the first step for a photographer to get a licentiate, which is also the first level in your photography qualification in the MPA, in the business of photography. And then you could turn that into an associateship in photography and a fellowship in photography. Wow. In the business of photography, in the same way as you can in photography. So last November, we had our first ever awards program at the Oscars, the MPA Oscars, as I call them, where people got recognition and awards for the business of photography. Wow. And that was just the first steps. And we were on stage at the same level as those receiving the awards for the excellence in the art of photography. Mm. So, and I think we need to do more of that worldwide. We need to recognize excellence in the business of photography as much as we do. And fair play to Ryle, because he absolutely and his team ran with this and said, we've got our 3 levels of qualification in photography. We're going to match that in the business of photography, and.
Fantastic. I remember one of the most phenomenal photographers I've ever known. We taught with him several times, and to hear his backstory. I mean, this guy's been on the cover of magazines that you would recognize, and he had just moved home to his parents' home with his family because he could not afford to support them on his own. And that is so needed in this industry. People just think showing good work is going to get them clients, and they're not charging enough. I mean, there's so many things.
I have seen photographers who are below average with regards excellence in the art of photography have really, really successful, profitable businesses.
Yes.
And I'm not saying you sacrifice one for the other, but what I say is if you deal with those 3 legs, and that there's the recognition, there's the mentorship and the qualifications across both those 2 things, and you get those 2 things together, then you absolutely have a chance of getting to that land of milk and honey,
Absolutely. So I think it's interesting, somebody like you who then has kind of this behind the scenes view of a lot of photographers in their business. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing them make?
How long do we have? I mean that in a really nice way, because I see them because I've made them all. Yes, so I'm coming from that angle. I've done every single one of these things I'm going to talk about. So the first one I see is that not concentrating on the business side of your photography and learning those skills. The second thing I see is thinking that everyone is your client.
Yes.
They're not. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's more important to know who's not your client as to who is your client, because then you've got a filter. Because you can't systemize your business trying to be everything to everyone. And you cannot create a profitable business unless you systemize it. So when you go back to step, then you hear all these fancy words like ideal client persona or client avatar. What that actually means is not everyone is your client. Figure out who is your client, over deliver for that client. So you can, 1, put systems around delivering for that client, because every client's going to be the same. And 2, then that ideal client, then they're probably friends with other people who are exactly like them. So then they become your sales and marketing engine by recommending other people who are like them, who are going to fall into your system. So you can maximize the sale by over delivering for that client, and therefore that results in a profitable business, rather than running around like a headless chicken saying Mary wants this and Jack wants that and Harry wants that, and you just cannot make a profit with that because it's not systemized. So that's number 2, is it?
Oh, yes, and you have one more?
And the third one is the financial side. So yeah, I know you're a big fan of Dave Ramsey, and Mike Michalowicz and Profit First is probably the business equivalent, if I call them that. But it's a really simple system. It just makes absolute sense because it works on the principles of not gapping those accounting practices that accountants, I love you and you have a very important role in society, but for small businesses, we're not accountants, and we need something that's more linked to human behavior. And it's linked to human behavior, but giving you a system that connects with human behavior and gets you to focus on, okay, here's the other biggest mistake we make, and I've made this one for years and years and years in business, is that we think as entrepreneurs, if we chase the sales and the sales go up, the profit will eventually come, but it doesn't. What happens is you chase the sales and you keep putting in overheads that keep going with it, and the profit never comes. So what Profit First does is not only does it link into human behavior, but it links into changing your mindset from making money rather than chasing sales. And when you then break it down and say, well, what for a business of my size, what should my operational expenses be? It forces you then, rather than thinking of strategies to drive the top line sales number, is that in balance and how can I reduce that? So they are my 3 pieces of advice, I think, if I was to just pick 3.
Well, and in Profit First, and we implemented that about a year ago based on your recommendation. It's so simple. I mean, yes. for Dave Ramsey people, it's like the envelope system for your business, except you're dividing and putting into different bank accounts. So when tax season comes, I've been putting a certain percentage into taxes. I know I've got the money to pay that. I've got enough money, squirreled away for, when a quarantine happens and I have to pay myself for a couple of months, and I wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. So yes, that is,
and Whitney,
it makes you rest easy.
Whitney, how many people like paying their tax bill? Anybody who does Profit First. Why? Because the more tax you pay, the more profit you made.
Oh, that's true.
What the problem is that we hate paying it sometimes because we haven't kept the money aside to be able to pay it. So the pressures are different. But if you operate the Profit First system, the money is in your taxation account to pay your tax bill. So you actually celebrate not only having the money to pay it, but the higher that is, it means the more profit is in your profit account too.
Well, and once you put it into its own account, it doesn't feel like your money anymore. It doesn't feel like I'm taking from what I should be keeping. Yes. That's always been for taxes.
And your tax money is not your money, never is. It belongs to the government or the state or whatever structure you have in your country. Yeah.
Well, so we talked about kind of the worst practices. What you see a lot of very successful photographers as well. Mm. And so what are you seeing from them that they're doing that sets them apart and makes them successful?
They know who their ideal client is, number one, and they structure their business around that. They devise strategies to over-deliver for that ideal client. They map out their client journey at each touch point they have. They stay in contact with past clients to ensure they keep coming back, because it's much easier to get a past client back to spend money with you. It's much easier and cheaper than finding a new client. And they just understand those principles, and they build their business around surprise and delight, over delivering for that ideal client. So that ideal client becomes their marketing and sales engine for them and keeps coming back over and over and over again. And then they structure their price lists and their sales systems to maximize the sale every time, but ensuring that the client has got more value than they've actually paid.
Mm-hmm. And I would say the 80-20 rule applies to this a lot. When every year we look back at our clients from the past year, and we can see that 80% of our income comes from 20% of our clients. And we want to figure out who that 20% is, so we can get more of them or get those same people to come back to us again. That automatically increases our income over the year.
And like I sit down with I talk to a lot of photographers, and I would say out of 100 photographers I talk to, when I ask the question, so after your client has bought and they've left your studio, or you've gone to their home and you've hung the wall art and all yourself and delivered the product, regardless of what model you do there, you know, when do you talk to them again? And they look at you and they go, what do you mean talk to them again? Well, do you check in with them after 3 months and 6 months to see, is everything still okay? And, you know, how are they getting on? And are they very happy? And, you know, that's great. And, you know, we know now that, you know, it's your other daughter's high school senior next year. So have you given any thought to what you might do for that? Or, you know, how is she different from your son that we did this year? And how can we, you know, is she into a different sport? Or, you know, what is she expecting from her photography? That you're just planting the seed in a really nice, friendly way. But they also see it as you're being genuine, which you are, in checking and see how are they, you know, how are they and how do they get on? And then you're sowing the seed for the next sale, you know. And you're not only doing it at that stage, but you do that all the way through the process, but all the way back through the process. But even just that, very few photographers touch base with their clients after the client has left the business, you know. Send them a birthday card, send them a Christmas card, send them a, you know, a handwritten note.
Yes, we bought a house a year ago. Our closing date was a year ago, just a couple of weeks ago. And we got a handwritten letter from our realtor with a gift card in it to go get coffee saying happy house anniversary. And I sent her a text with that and I said, you are so good at what you do, because how many realtors do this? And that's the same thing with our industry. It's the same thing with you, with like 3XM. I mean, it's a relationship business. And when you develop those deep relationships, I mean, we've said before, people do business with people that they like. And all things being the same, all things being unequal, people still do business with people that they like. If you develop those kind of deep relationships, people aren't going to leave you if they find a better deal, or even if they find somebody who's a better photographer, because you're the person that they have a relationship with.
And when things go wrong, and they do, they forgive you.
Yes.
You know, they give you that second or third chance even sometimes, because we all muck up, right? Well, we certainly do anyway. So, but, you know, when we muck up for a client, you know, they're very understanding, and they give us a second chance or a chance to put it right, you know, and that's equally as important.
Absolutely. Well, I have one final question for you, and we already touched on it a little bit. You've mentioned a couple of books that you like. Were there any books that were just pivotal to you at different points in your life that really caused you to make a change that was a very important, lasting change for you personally or your business?
Yeah, quite a few, but I think what helped me was the process of books. So I think I mentioned a little bit earlier that I've always struggled to finish a book. In fact, you know, if I go back more than 4 or 5 years ago, prior to that, I probably finished one book in 20 years. Now, I probably bought 250 books, but I finished one, which was the one I talked about, Ricardo Semler. And my savior was probably Audible. So,
okay.
So Audible was my savior because, and my methodology is this: I listen to the book. If I like the book and I feel I want to continue with it, I then buy the hard copy. And then as I listen to the book when I'm driving the car, so rather than listening to all the bad news on the radio driving to work, I put on an Audible book instead. And then if there's a certain thing I say, I didn't quite get that on the Audible, I need to deep dive into that, I then open that number of pages in my printed book and read it to get a full understanding. So when I say I've read a book, I still don't complete a book from cover to cover reading it. I do listening to it, and then I deep dive then in to get the detail if I feel I need to have and listen to it.
Wonderful. I get on to David for listening to books instead of reading them, but if you're retaining it, that's okay. I won't hold that against you.
That's it. But my favorite author is probably Mike Michalowicz, and I thank Mary Fitztaylor for introducing me to him. I think it was Mary, and you know, I just love his style, and I love his way and his attitude and what he's done. So he has the Beer Mat Entrepreneur. He has Profit First, of course. He has a pumpkin plan, which is a great way to a system to define who your ideal client is. He's got, or where to start with that anyway. He has a clockwork, which is really, really good. And clockwork is about systemization. He has Surge, and Surge is a really good book in trying to figure out what's happening in your industry and what the next wave is that you can possibly ride. So it's really apt right now, and we've used some of those techniques in the challenge that I put to our team to figure out, you know, what's the next wave coming? Is there a wave coming as a result of this that we can position our business to take advantage of before it arrives, the same way as a surfer would? You know, they're out watching for which wave should I pick to surf. So it's that principle. And then he's just released What to Fix Next. And I met Mike I positioned myself to meet Mike at Imaging USA 2 years ago when he was there. So I managed to connect with somebody who was booking in all the speakers, and I happened to be speaking that year. And I said, when is Mike arriving? And I said, this time, this date. I said, right, I'll be here. So I turned up to the speaker lounge when he was arriving, knowing he was going to arrive, and there was no one else in it except him and me. So I had 30 minutes one-on-one with him. I brought a copy of every single one of his books, and he autographed every single one of them for me, and I have those in pride of place. But what that led to this time, for this book that he did, for people who are connected with him, he offered, who wants to proofread this for me? So I actually, and give some feedback. So I actually read one of the final drafts 4 months ago, and the book's been released this April. So that was nice. Donald Miller, then StoryBrand. It's funny, I love his system because I always try and relate something into a system. His values are different than mine. So I actually like Mike's values better than Donald's, but I still have ultimate respect for Donald. While Mary, who's a really good friend, she's the opposite. She says, what do you mean? Sure, Mike Michalowicz is from where is he from? New Jersey, and I said, yeah, but I actually believe more in what he says is his purpose than I do what Donald Miller says. And that's just me, other people, but what his system is absolutely amazing. And another great book, if you into strategy, it's a bit more deeper, but Blue Ocean Strategy, if you haven't read that book, it's absolutely excellent. Kim and Mayburn. That is absolutely excellent. If you're looking at your client experience, I would recommend Joey Coleman. He's a genius in this area. And his last book, I think, is Never Lose a Customer Again. So really good at mapping out. So when I did my last master's, I looked at online buying process. And when the client's at the consideration stage of their buying process, when they're searching online, they're visiting a website, what contact strategy do they prefer in a client experience way? So would they prefer the company's website that they're on to interact with them on chat? And chat was only coming out at that time when I did that in 2009. Would they prefer that they leave their details and they get an email within an hour, or an email the next day, or an email within a week? Or would they prefer if the client company was able to phone them while they were on the website to offer help? And I measure that with a quantitative survey across 1,000 photographers in the UK to see which would they prefer. And chat was only starting at that time, and very few websites had it, but that was the winner.
Really?
Yeah, it was the chat that pops up on a website now that's everywhere. But at that stage, like, there was probably only 1 in 300 websites had it. But that was the winner from, I used a ServQual model of measuring client satisfaction. And that was the winner. So, and how I did it was because I couldn't do it with a real life website, but I basically wrote a story around a scenario of when the photographer was in their consideration stage. And if this happened, how would you react against these questions? And it won by a mile. Like, it wasn't even a contest with any of those other contact strategies.
Wow. Well, do you have a place where your favorite books are listed anywhere, or is that something we can put in the comments? Because I've got a whole bunch here, and I know people are going to be like, what was that book you mentioned?
Okay, and what I will do is the recording of this will be placed in both our closed group 3XM Insiders and the think tank tomorrow. And I promise within the next 48 hours, when that's done, I will make a list of all those books and I'll post them in the comments on that. Is that okay?
Fantastic. Yes, that's great. Just go ahead and put links to Amazon because we're going to be clicking.
Yes,
Well,
I must ring Donald and ring Mike and ring those and see. Is there any? Have you an affiliate link there, lads? Is there any chance of a few quid?
Definitely. Well, this has been fantastic, Ronan. I know we've gone over an hour already, but
Oh, have we? Oh my gosh, when
oh,
you're having
yeah.
fun. Oh, we're 10 minutes over.
But I just want to thank you for your openness and willingness to answer any question, and just for what you do for our industry. I know everybody in the think tank group has been so thankful for what you've done for us during the quarantine and the encouragement that you've been. So I know everyone will appreciate learning more about your story and kind of finding out where all of this comes from.
Well, thank you so much, Whitney. You know, these are, it's not a comfortable thing for me to do this for the reasons I've already mentioned, but I really appreciate you reaching out and saying, Ron, come on, you have to do it, you have to do it. And you didn't give up. You said, no, you have to do it, you have to do it. So I thank you for those who have watched. Thank you, Whitney, for hosting me and encouraging me and insisting that I do it. I hope you've learned something from it. And please, please, please don't forget, you know, you will come out through this. You know, if something goes wrong and you fail, it's not the end of the world. You know, I've been there. I know what it's like. So just keep at it. Have the courage to continue, because we have a really important job to do coming out of this COVID-19. You know, our frontline workers are putting their lives in line doing their job, but we have a really important job to make people feel healthier in their mind, in particular, coming through this. And the way we can do that is to capture those connections, and they've moved closer. If you're like our family and other families, you know, those bonds have grown closer, and it's our job now to capture those, so that helps them as well become healthier mind, body and spirit, because we're in for an economic challenging time and people are going to suffer through that, but our role is to help them through that.
Absolutely.
Are we done?
We are done.
Okay.
Ronan, Sláinte to you. And we'll see you again soon.
Okay, take care. Thank you so much, Whitney. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.